The lights of the gallery shimmered off the polished hardwood floors as I made my way through the crowd of art enthusiasts. My name is Alex Morgan, and I've been collecting art for nearly a decade now. Ever since I graduated with my fine arts degree and landed a job at a digital marketing firm that actually paid enough for me to indulge my passion. Tonight's auction at the Meridian Gallery was supposed to be my moment. The unveiling of a previously unknown work by Eliza Thornfield, an artist whose emotionally charged landscapes had captivated me since my college days. I'd been saving for months, determined to add her Midnight Harbor to my modest collection. The gallery was more crowded than usual, the air thick with perfume and pretension as collectors circled like elegant sharks. I was nursing a glass of complimentary champagne when I first noticed him across the room, tall with dark wavy hair and glasses that somehow made his intense focus on each painting seem even more attractive. He moved with confidence through the space, pausing thoughtfully before each piece, actually engaging with the art instead of just the social scene. I found myself watching him more than the exhibits. When the auctioneer announced they would begin with Thornfield's Midnight Harbor, my heart raced. I positioned myself near the front, auction paddle gripped tightly in my sweating palm. And that's when he appeared beside me, the man I'd been watching. Up close, I could see the rich brown of his eyes, the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Beautiful piece," he murmured, and I wasn't sure if he meant the painting or something else entirely. "I've been following Thornfield's work for years," I replied, trying to sound casual while my pulse quickened. "I'm Daniel, by the way. Daniel Reed," he said, extending his hand. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through me. "Alex Morgan," I responded, reluctantly releasing his hand as the auctioneer called for opening bids. The painting itself was breathtaking, a harbor scene at midnight, where the darkness wasn't frightening but intimate, protective almost. Moonlight reflected off the water in fragmented silver, while distant lights from unseen homes created a sense of life just beyond view. What made Thornfield's work so special was how she captured loneliness without despair. There was always a sense of possibility in her darkest scenes. The bidding began at $5,000, which was already stretching my budget. I raised my paddle, heart pounding. To my surprise, Daniel raised his immediately after. Our eyes met briefly, his expression playful, almost challenging. The price climbed steadily, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. Each time I bid, Daniel would counter. The room seemed to fade away until it felt like just the two of us engaged in this strange dance around a painting we both clearly coveted. At $12,000, the absolute maximum I had planned, I hesitated before raising my paddle one final time. The auctioneer pointed to me, then scanned the room. $12,000 going once. My triumph was short-lived as Daniel smoothly raised his paddle. $13,000, the auctioneer announced. I lowered my head, a complex mix of disappointment and something else, a strange thrill from our interaction, washing over me. $13,000 going once, twice, sold to number 47. The gavel fell with finality. I glanced at Daniel, expecting to see victory on his face, but instead found him already looking at me with what appeared to be genuine concern. As people began moving toward the next featured piece, he touched my elbow lightly. "You really wanted it, didn't you?" he asked. "That obvious, huh?" I laughed, trying to mask my disappointment. "I've been saving for months. Thornfield's work just speaks to me." I was surprised by my own honesty with this stranger. Daniel studied me for a moment, then said something that changed everything. "What would you think about sharing it?" The proposal was so unexpected I thought I'd misheard him. "Sharing? The painting?" I asked incredulously. "Why not?" he shrugged, his expression open and earnest. "It clearly means something to both of us. We could work out a schedule, 6 months at your place, 6 at mine, or whatever makes sense." He smiled then, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Plus, it gives us a reason to stay in touch." I found myself both skeptical and intrigued. Who shares an expensive piece of art with a complete stranger? "That's an unusual proposal," I said carefully. "How would we even arrange that? And why would you offer?" "Let's discuss it over coffee," he suggested. "There's a little place around the corner that stays open late after these events. What do you say?" No obligation, just conversation. That's how I found myself sitting across from Daniel at Midnight Brew, a cozy cafe with art-covered walls and mismatched furniture. He was an architect, It turned out, with a passion for art that stemmed from his grandmother, who had been a painter herself. Art should be experienced, not hoarded, he explained, warming his hands around his mug. When I saw your face as you bid, I could tell the painting meant something special to you. It didn't feel right to just take it away. But $13,000 is a lot to spend on something you'll only see half the time, I pointed out, still trying to understand his motivation. Daniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. Let me explain why this matters to me. Art creates connections between the artist and viewer, between the past and present, and sometimes, he paused, his eyes meeting mine, between people who might otherwise never have met. I've always believed the real value of art isn't in owning it, but in how it makes us feel, the conversations it starts. There was something disarmingly genuine about him that made his unusual proposal seem almost reasonable. We spent hours talking about art, our collections, our lives. Daniel's apartment was in the renovated Arts District downtown, while I lived in a smaller place near the university. We exchanged phone numbers and social media accounts, promising to work out the logistics soon. A week later, Midnight Harbor was delivered to Daniel's apartment, and he invited me over to see it installed. His place was exactly what I'd imagined. Open concept with high ceilings, minimalist furniture, and carefully selected art pieces that created a cohesive narrative throughout the space. The Thornfield looked perfect against his slate gray wall, illuminated by subtle track lighting. What do you think? He asked, standing beside me as we both gazed at our shared treasure. It's perfect here, I admitted. You have a good eye for placement. Well, you'll get to decide where it lives in your place in 3 months, he replied. We decided on quarterly rotations rather than biannual ones, frequent enough to keep things interesting, but not so frequent that it became a hassle. That first evening at Daniel's apartment established a pattern. Each time the painting changed hands, we'd help each other hang it, then spend the evening talking over wine or takeout. Sometimes we'd visit galleries together, discovering new artists and debating techniques. Our friendship developed naturally, built on shared passion and increasingly personal conversations. I learned about Daniel's coming out to his traditional family in college, how his father hadn't spoken to him for 2 years afterward but had eventually come around. He heard about my disastrous relationship with my ex, who had never understood my obsession with art. We discovered we both loved old black and white films, spicy food, and had both wanted to be astronauts as children. 3 months into our arrangement, when it was time to move Midnight Harbor to my apartment, something shifted between us. Daniel arrived with the carefully wrapped painting and a bottle of wine. As we hung it above my fireplace, his hand brushed mine, lingering just a moment too long. The electricity between us was undeniable. Over dinner that night, our conversation flowed as easily as ever, but there was a new undercurrent of tension, the good kind that makes your skin tingle with anticipation. As he was leaving, standing in my doorway, Daniel paused. You know, I think I got the better end of this deal, he said softly. How do you figure? The painting's leaving with me tonight, I replied, trying to keep my voice light despite the heaviness in the air. Because sharing this painting gave me you, he said simply, then leaned in slowly, giving me plenty of time to pull away. I didn't. Our first kiss was gentle, questioning, and over far too quickly. I should go, he whispered, but I'd like to see you again. Not just for art rotation. Our relationship evolved naturally from there. Dating Daniel was unlike any relationship I'd experienced before. He approached our connection with the same thoughtfulness he gave to his architectural designs, attentive to details and patient with the process. We explored museums together, spent rainy Sundays reading in comfortable silence, and slowly integrated our separate lives. But around the 6-month mark, complications arose. Daniel was offered a significant commission that would require frequent travel to Chicago for several months. The distance strained our new relationship, and questions about the painting suddenly became metaphors for deeper insecurities. What happens to our arrangement if this doesn't work out? I asked during a tense phone call after he'd canceled our plans for the 3rd weekend in a row. Are we going to have awkward painting exchanges every 3 months for the rest of our lives? Is that what you're worried about? The painting. Daniel's voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. Because it sounds like you're already planning for this to fail. That's not fair, I protested. You're the one who's barely present anymore. I feel like I'm dating Midnight Harbor more than I'm dating you lately. The argument escalated, with both of us saying things we didn't mean. By the end of the call, we'd agreed to take some space, a phrase that left me staring at the painting in my living room with a hollow feeling in my chest. The harbor scene that had once represented possibility now seemed to mock me with its distant lights and vast emptiness. For 2 weeks, we didn't speak. The painting remained on my wall, a daily reminder of what might have been. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and declining invitations from friends. It was during one of these late nights that I received a text from Daniel. "Can we talk?" In person, we met at the Meridian Gallery, where it all began, on a quiet Tuesday evening. Daniel was already waiting when I arrived, standing before a new Thornfield piece that had recently been acquired by the gallery. This one depicted a lighthouse at dawn, the darkness giving way to soft pink light. "I've been thinking about what art really means," Daniel said without preamble as I approached. "About why certain pieces speak to us." He turned to face me, his expression serious. "The night we met, I bid on that painting because it made me feel something I couldn't explain. Then I met you, and suddenly the painting made perfect sense." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart beating faster despite my attempt to remain guarded. Thornfield's work is about finding light in darkness, about the beauty of solitary moments and the promise of connection just beyond view. "That's what I found with you, Alex." He took a deep breath. "I've been distant, and I'm sorry. This project consumed me, and I fell into old patterns of shutting people out when I'm stressed. But being apart from you these past 2 weeks has been miserable." "For me too," I admitted. "But I got scared. When things started getting difficult, it was easier to focus on the logistics of sharing a painting than to admit how much I was falling for you." Daniel stepped closer, taking my hands in his. "I don't care about the painting anymore. Or rather, I do, but not because of what it is, because of what it represents. It brought us together, and that's worth more than any art could ever be." "So what are you saying?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. "I'm saying I love you, Alex. And I'm saying that maybe instead of trading the painting back and forth, we should consider having one place where it stays permanently, where we both stay." The implication was clear, and it took my breath away. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" "Eventually, yes. But for now, I'm asking if you're willing to try again. To be patient with me when work gets crazy, to tell me when you need more from me, to build something real together." In that moment, surrounded by art that moved us both, I knew my answer. "Yes," I said simply, and the smile that broke across Daniel's face was more beautiful than any painting could ever be. We sealed our reconciliation with a kiss that promised new beginnings, then spent hours wandering the gallery hand in hand, discussing which pieces we loved and why. By the time we left, we had decided that Midnight Harbor would hang in Daniel's apartment until I could sublet my place and move in with him, a transition we'd approach thoughtfully, just as we had our shared ownership of the painting. 6 months later, as I unpacked the last of my boxes in our now shared apartment, Daniel called me into the living room. There, beside Midnight Harbor, hung a new piece, a small original work by an emerging artist, depicting 2 figures standing before a painting, their silhouettes illuminated by gallery lighting. "Happy move-in day," Daniel said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I commissioned it after our reconciliation at the gallery. The artist was there that night, apparently. She said we inspired her." I turned in his arms, overwhelmed by the gesture. "It's perfect," I whispered against his lips. "Our very own story, captured in art." As we stood there, surrounded by the collection we now shared, I marveled at how a single painting and a chance encounter had changed everything. What had begun as a bid war had transformed into something neither of us could have anticipated, a love story framed not just by art, but by the willingness to share something precious, to take risks, to create something beautiful together. "You know," Daniel murmured, "I never told you why I was so drawn to Midnight Harbor in the first place." "Why's that?" I asked, leaning into his embrace. "The harbor represents shelter, a safe place to return to after navigating rough waters. That night at the auction, I was looking for something that felt like home." His eyes met mine, warm and certain. "Turns out I found it, just not in the way I expected." As evening fell outside our windows, casting the apartment in the same gentle darkness depicted in our shared painting, I knew with absolute certainty that we had both won something far more valuable than any auction item. In each other, We had found not just a partner to share art with, but someone to create a masterpiece of a life alongside, brushstroke by brushstroke, day by day, together. Total _char_count, 17,915.